welcome to Method. Today I want to talk a little bit about promises. I think that promises is one of the most important patterns that developed in the JavaScript community. Before we had promises, we were doing asynchronous callbacks, and we were throwing callbacks around in the function parameter to the left, to the right, down. 4 levels were insane, 5 levels, 10 levels. We had callbacks everywhere, and you couldn't make sense of it at all. Promises solve this, and promises makes asynchronous coding pleasant. So today we're gonna look at the call stack, we're gonna look at the deferred functions, and we're gonna show how to rewrite callback hell into promise heaven. Let's get started! Okay, in order to understand why promises are so powerful, I first want to explain a little bit about JavaScript call stack. First and foremost, let's have a look at what call stack is. So imagine this file. It's 4 functions that calls each other, and the first function is called down here, step 1. So what will happen here is we're gonna call step 1, that calls step 2, that calls step 3, that calls step 4, that then starts the debugger. Let's try this script and see what happens. Okay, so now we're in the debugger here, and we can see that call stack contains all our steps. Here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3, here's step 4. Since JavaScript is a single-threaded language, only one of these call stacks can be executed at any given time. Here's an illustration of how the JavaScript event loop works. It can only handle one stack at any given time, so it always needs to complete one stack before it can take the next one. These stacks are triggered from click event handler, it can be a request animation frame callback or a setTimeout callback. Okay, back to our editor, and I'm gonna illustrate how setTimeout works. We're gonna remove this and write a new function, function sync, and it logs console.log sync, and then one function called deferred. Function deferred, and it logs deferred. So if you call them after each other, they should log sync and deferred in order. Try it. Boink, it works. Sync and then deferred. If we put deferred inside sync, deferred should be printed first, and it is. But if we wrap this in a setTimeout, it will be called after sync. Let's try this. setTimeout, deferred, and then let's say 1000 milliseconds. Try it. So sync and then deferred. That's expected. But if we set this to 0, will it be called first then? No, we have the same delay here. So why is this? This is because setTimeout tells JavaScript, don't do this function now. Do it later, but not earlier than this time. And since not now means that it's not in this stack, it has to be as early as in the next call stack. Consider this animation. Here we start the stack, and at the top of the stack we have a setTimeout to deferred. So deferred popped out from that stack, put on another stack, and executed. Let's now imagine that deferred had a value that we wanted to get, but we couldn't get it immediately. So instead of logging deferred, it will return that string. Return deferred. And since we call this here in another stack, we can't access this value immediately. Normally, we will say like this, return deferred, but there's no such thing when you do it like this. It simply doesn't exist because this is not run here and now in the stack. So sync must now take a callback function like this, and we need to supply setTimeout with an anonymous function instead. Function here, and in the anonymous function we will run deferred explicitly, And we will call the callback method with the deferred result. So const res and then callback res. What we now can do in sync is supply the callback as an anonymous function. Supply the callback as an anonymous function. Function result and then console.log result. Just to show that this actually takes time, we're gonna set a delay for 1 second. So what is expected to happen here is that we call sync first, we send in this anonymous function, that is this callback, and then in sync we call setTimeout with an anonymous function that wraps our deferred call. And then callback is called with res. That means that res comes out here again in the function and then we log it in the console. Let's check this out. Boom. In 1 second we got the deferred string here. Imagine now that we have a multi-step process that needs to be deferred. We're gonna take a new example here, get salary sync, copy it into our main. So this is a program that calculates my disposable income. So let's say I have a salary of 33,000. I've subtracted tax and I subtract the rent. Then this is how much I can use every month or whatever it might be. Now I run this and results in 19,750. Imagine that we get the salary from the bank. So this will send a network request somewhere and get the data back. This means that get salary will need to take a callback that we will call when we have the salary. And here we simulate a slow network request with setTimeout. Timeout. And we say, okay, now Windows changed my keyboard settings automatically. Perfect. setTimeout. And we create an anonymous array function here. And this one calls callback with 33,000 after 1 second. So it's a very slow network request and we get an integer back. In order to make get disposable income work, we need now to supply a callback here and get salary and then subtract tax and subtract rent. So we can't use the return value anymore. We need to put it here and we can say salary. And then in the callback we can do the thing we need. But now we can't return from this function because this function now uses a synchronous function. So this also needs to be asynchronous. So this needs to take a callback. The return value can't be used anymore. And get disposable income needs to receive a callback too. So salary. Let's try this. 1 second and we got the salary. Okay, so imagine now that we have different things here that are slow. So subtract tax, we might do that at the tax authorities. We might subtract the rent with our housing guy. So we're gonna implement callbacks on these two to see how that works. Callback. Oh. Copy this setTimeout, which takes a second. And it calls a callback with the incoming salary here times 0.75. The return value goes away. Same thing for subtract rent. It now needs to take a callback. And it calls the callback with salary minus 5,000. And the return statement goes away. So now these functions don't have a return value either. So we need to refactor this. Salary to here. One last time. And salary. And finally in the subtract rent we can call the callback. Okay, so because all of these has 1 second delay, let me make this a little bit more clear what is going on. So I'm going to call this salary step, or yeah, salary 1. Then we call with salary 1, get salary 2 back. Call this with salary 2 and get salary 3 back, and we return salary 3. And here we got get back income. No. Disposable. So let's run this and see what's going on. 1, 2, 3. Ah, there it is. Very reliable. So the reason I wanted to show this is how messy it gets with a callback. All the functions that lead into your deep function that is asynchronous needs to have a callback in the function parameters. And this is really difficult to refactor after a while. What the promise do is, instead of you send in a callback, it sends back an object that you can send a callback to. And this is much more nicer because you can actually use the return value instead of preemptively send something in to the function. Let's start refactoring this using promises. So we remove the input callback and instead we return a promise here. Return new promise, and the callback in a promise usually calls it resolved. So we're going to do that here too. Resolve. And we put this in here. And instead of calling a callback, we call resolve. Let's just show how to use only getSalary to begin with. Let's remove this and see if we can fold up these things that we're not going to use now. Zup, zup. So now we can say get salary, and we get the promise back. Const promise. Then on the promise we can call then. Then is a method on the promise object that puts a callback in the promise chain. So here we will get out the salary. And we can say console.log salary. So this should hopefully log 33,000 in the console. No. Did I spell something wrong? Yeah, I'm missing an E here. There we go. Okay, since we can chain functions to JavaScript on the return value, this thing can go away. So we can simplify it to just say getSalary.then, and then we get salary here. This is usually how you see promises written. So yeah, we see there, it was the same thing happened. So now we want to simplify our chain here and make everything promiseifiable. So we say the same thing in here. Return new promise, resolve. And we update this callback function in here too. Resolve. And we delete the callback from the function parameters. The same thing goes for subtract rent. Return new promise, resolve. Update the callback to call resolve instead. And remove the callback from the function parameters. Okay, let's refactor get disposable income now. I mean get disposable income. I'm gonna do this in a non-traditional way, just to show exactly what's going on. So let's start with get salary. Const salary promise equals get salary. And then we chain salary promise dot then. And here we have here we get salary 1 out, and from this we return subtract rent with salary 1. What we get back here now is actually a new promise that is chained to this. Every time we call then, you get a new chain back. So const rent promise. Actually did a little bit of mistake here. I need to refactor this. This is actually subtract tax we want there. Subtract tax, and it is the tax promise. And then finally we can chain the tax promise with subtract rent. So we say const rent promise equals tax promise dot then salary 2, and this one returns subtract rent with salary 2. Then now finally we can return the rent promise here. So this should mean that I can run get disposable income, then get the disposable income immediately here. Disposable. Well, this might look a little bit suspicious here because it's hard to see really what's going on. But all of these things kind of happen in the same time, and then we return the rent promise immediately in then this function. So all of these basically just chain up events to handle in the promises. So nothing here is especially asynchronous. It's the thing that is in the subtract tax, in get salary, in subtract rent that is asynchronous. But the salary promise here and the tax promise chain, the rent promise chain, are all synchronous events. So let's see if this actually works, and then we're going to simplify this code. Okay, so wait 1 second, and that should trigger one thing. There we got it, 19,750. So now I want to show you how much nicer this can be written because we use promises, because right now it doesn't look like an improvement, to be honest. So first of all, since we chain everything, we can set return value already up here. And then, now this is going to be magic. Because of the nature of promises, it takes a callback that if it returns a promise, it will be honored. We can write just this. Then subtract tax. That's it. Inside only supplying this function, all of this can be contained. Then we'll call subtract tax with the salary here, which goes into this and return its value in one and the same place. So then, and this is the exact same thing as this whole thing. The same thing goes for the rent promise. So we can say then subtract rent. And we can remove this. And since we already returned the chain up there, we can remove this too. So if my calculations are correct, this will also work exactly as before. Bang, there it is. There is one last thing I want to show before we have some fun with the real project. Imagine we have two functions that returns asynchronously after that time, and they are not dependent on each other. In this case, the tax is dependent on knowing the salary and the subtraction of rent also. But imagine we have two salaries that needs to be combined. We have, like, for example, we might have a two-person household with different salaries and we want to combine them. Then we can say here, get salary 1, and it's going to be 33,000. And we have get salary 2, which is 45,000. They take 1 second each, but we don't have to execute them sequentially. We can combine this time into one. The way to do this with promises is very easy. We can add a new function that's called get salary sum. And in this we return a promise.all. And in here we call get salary and get salary 1 as items of an array. Get salary 1 and get salary 2. And then here we say then salaries. Can probably use an array summer here. And we return the sum of these. How do you do that in JavaScript? I guess we can use array reduce. Return salaries.reduce. And how does this work? I think is previous, current, and then return prev plus cur, and then initialize with 0. So now we should get 45 plus 33,000 in get salary sum down here. Replace it with get salary sum, and we should get something like a little bit more than the double. There we went. But total waiting time should only be 3 seconds. If we had more salaries that needed fetching, we can very simply just add them here. I'm gonna simplify this a little bit so I only have one, and this is gonna be super stupid, but you're gonna be able to supply the salary here and it's gonna come back later. So obviously this is completely pointless, but it's just to help the example. We have a lot of these, like say 6. This should incur a penalty of 6 seconds if we do them sequentially. There's a 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, 80,000. Wowza! But the whole operation should only take 4 seconds. Let's lower these timeouts to 200 milliseconds. And this too, and we should see a little bit more than 1 second for this. And it worked. Having this for free with promises is a huge benefit. Okay, now I thought we could get started with our little project there. Too much mustache, I can't pronounce the words. Okay, back here, and we delete all this. And my project will be that I'm gonna talk to an API, do something with the API data, and then present the results. So I'm gonna use the Spotify API. So we're gonna find this one, Spotify API. And here we have a good resource, I think. Go directly to endpoint reference. We don't need anything else because we are pro. So I'm gonna start by searching on something. Search type artist. Let's check this out. Okay, this is a great start. You can start by writing this in a program. And something that's a little bit new now is that we're going to use the fetch API. It is a replaces XML HTTP request, and it's very simple and it's promise based, which is perfect for this tutorial. So we just say fetch, and we supply this URL here. Then I think it needed a queue here and the string, which would be Michael Jackson. As Jackson. So here we URL encode it from the head. Type album. I think this should be fine. So this returns a promise. That means that we can write then here. Then response. Make it a little bit more pretty here. Response and console.log response. Let's see if we can run this and see what happens. Kabloom. Okay, so we see here that status is good. This is where what we're fetched, and we have the headers here. No, we don't. Never mind that. And the body we can't get yet, because the response that you get from fetch needs to be converted to something else, because fetch can get images, it can get text, it can get anything. And in this case we want JSON. And the fetch API's response object has a built-in method for getting the JSON data from the response, and it returns an object. So if we say here return, or actually we can do it immediately, response.json. So what we do here is we get the response out here, then we run the JSON method on the response object, which means that we can chain here again and get the data out. The JSON method automatically converts it into a JavaScript object from a string. So let's log the data here. Data. And let's try again. See if we, okay, here we have a nice object that we can browse. So what we do now, let's go into the items, And the first one is an album. Okay. So here we get albums. So let's say we fetch the first 9 albums. I'm just gonna see. I'm just gonna look at them and make sure they make sense here. Okay, that looks good. No surprises here. And then I'm gonna remember the path here. We had albums.items index.uri. So let's see if we can loop over this. Const URIs. Make this an array here with URIs just to check. Or actually we can do a little bit fancier. We say data.albums.items.forEach, and we can get out item here, and we return item.uri. I think this should work, and then we console.log the URIs array here instead. No. Hooray! What's in the item then? It's probably wrapped in something. So, can't I read now? So this is each item here. And it's .uri. What? Okay, let's see. What was the error I got again? Oh, this is what this is referring to. Undefined now. Cool. I can't do anything right today. Oh, of course. We need the same map here. There we go. Nice and dandy. We have several URIs here. We only want the first 5. So we're gonna slice this. Slice. Can you do this? Not sure about the syntax to slice. No. So I guess we need to say where we start. Here we go. Now we got 5. So we're of course wasting a little bit of data here, but that's fine. Okay, now we want to use these URIs to fetch data from a new endpoint. So back to the API. And what else do they have? We have album URIs now, I think. So we fetch album data here. Okay, doesn't seem to be any surprises here. So let's create new URIs. So now we're gonna use this URI list and create new promises using fetch. So I'm gonna call this new array tasks. Const tasks. Yes, const tasks equals URIs.map, and for each URI we say fetch. And what was it? Let's copy this. Plus URI. So now in this tasks array we have a bunch of promises. So log tasks, let's have a look at them. There are 5 promises, all of them failed. Perfect. Let's see, what did we wrong? Did we miss anything important there? Okay, I'm gonna test your example to make sure I didn't clumsify myself. Begärt. Oh, I don't need that. Curl. Okay, that works. What's wrong with mine? Ah, it only has the ID. So we don't need the Spotify things. That's dumb. Okay, no problem. URI.split colon and return the third thing. Okay. let's see how this goes. Okay, we have promises that didn't collapse, and all of them were resolved. So this promise blob or promise array we can now put in promise.all. So here we say return promise.all tasks, and we create a new link in chain. Then we can say here we have the responses. We say albums actually. And we can look at these albums. Console.log albums. And let's see what we have now. Bunch of responses. No data. We need to convert them to JSON. No problem. What is the easiest way to do this? Do I need a new resolver here? Can I? Yeah, I guess we do. Promise.all and albums.forMap album and response and response.json here. So do you have all the parentheses? No, there's the map. Boom. Wait, let me split this into one more row. Return, because I can't read it now actually. There we go. And that done. So here I actually want to say responses instead. And responses. Then we have albums out here. And see what we get. Okay, now it looks better. So here's all the albums that we got out. What do we have here? The Essentially Michael Jackson is a good one. I bought that at the gas station once. Cool. We have images here. Great. I want this. Let's use these images for something. So, back to the code. And back to the browser, because I forgot to see, forgot to memorize how this looks. Object.images, then an array, and we have a bunch of height and width. I'm gonna do a naive solution, just take the first one, because it looks like that is the biggest. So let's try this. And now we need to fetch these images. So we say return new, promise.all, and we can say here albums.map. We're gonna create fetch responses or fetch requests for all, and here we get out an album, and we say fetch, and this should then be, I think we got the full URL. Yeah, we did. So it should be images index0.url album.images index0.url. And here we now should get out responses. Again, responses. And I actually don't know what the response looks like when I fetch it with an image. So let's have a look. Log responses. And now I also want to look on the network request, because this can be pretty interesting to see what we're doing actually. So the first thing here's the search thing. Then we query more albums. Album metadata. Oh, look, here's my... That was a pleasant surprise. This is my nickname here. POM in the ID. I don't know what to say, but it's an honor. Michael Jackson, I hope it's a good album. Which is it? It is... too long, didn't read. Never mind that then. And then lastly we have the images here. Very cool, very cool. And we couldn't see the images. Okay, never mind. So, I think I need to Google this, because I don't know how to convert this to readable image. So I'm gonna say here fetch API response to image. Let's see, do we have something here? Okay, create object URL from the blob. Okay, we can use this. Let's start with that. So now we're gonna create a bunch of images here instead. We say return promise.all. Yeah, promise.all, and we say responses.map response to response.blob, and blob just means whatever data it is in it, I guess. Then blobs. I want to look at the blobs here. I actually don't know what it's supposed to look like. Hope I don't get scared. Blob, 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 blob. Okay. This... cool. We're gonna return all the blobs at object URL. Return blobs.map blob to, what was it? Yeah, create object URL there. Cool. Then we can chain it again. Then URLs, I guess. I don't... that part of the API is a little bit wonky, I think. URLs. Okay, let's have a look what this looks like. Okay, I guess this is UUIDs from the... Okay, I guess this is UUIDs from a browser cache or something. Oh, that's pretty cool, I guess. Nice. So now let's just show these images on the canvas here, on the DOM. Oh, let's do another chain here. Return URLs.map URL equals const image equals new image, and then image.src equals URL and return image. We can do another thing here to make this a little bit more extravagant. We do like this. Return promise.all, and we map over all the URLs here. But we create a new promise here. Now here, return new promise, resolve, and it doesn't return image, but on image unload, image.add event listener, what is it, load, then we resolve. And actually I want to be a little bit more expletive here and say like this, resolve, and actually send in the image here. Okay, I just need to check there that I did everything right. So promise.all and urls.map. I think this should be okay. And then we should get out a bunch of images here. But then images console.log images. And here they are. Now we can just put this in the DOM. Let's erase this inspectable blob here. So we say images.forEach image and document.body.append child image. Boom. Hello, darling. Well, that's pretty cool. And that, everybody, is how you make a complex multi-step promise chain. And as you can see, everything looks very nice. Okay, lastly, I want to show you how the equivalent code for this program would look in using callbacks. So we have this file here somewhere. Where did I put it? There it is. Yeah, that's how it will look if we use this with callbacks. Does anybody have any questions?